What's up, H-Town and all around? I'm your host, Old Soccer Guy, or OSG, here in the Foxtrot studios for an instant ramen. You've got Andreas, the dynamic Foxtrot. How you doing, brother?
What's up, OSG? It's been a while.
Hey, these are always fun to do, as everybody knows. But today's guest, another special guest, as we reach out to our ventures, and we are lucky today to get an MLS writer, a national MLS savviest that knows what he's talking about. Well, it depends on if you like his articles that week or not, and that's not his fault. That's more our team's fault. But here, Matthew Doyle, thank you for joining us today. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. I was going to make tapas for dinner tonight, but now I'm feeling like I want ramen. And I got some fried chicken. I got some Naruto. I could actually throw together a ramen tonight. Now we're talking.
Nice. That's what we love, to inspire. So as you inspire a lot of other people, we just succeeded, man. But Andreas, man, why don't you take us into the first segment of the show and take off?
Oh yeah, and like I said earlier, like it's been a while since we did an instant ramen, and one of the people that I had to bring in at some point eventually was Matt here, and only because we've been going way back, and we've only interacted a couple times here and there. I asked him like a general question about MLS and how the draft works, and honestly, like ever since then, or a little bit before then, I've been tuning into all the content MLS has been putting out since I started following MLS, the Dynamo in particular, and Matt Doyle's name was everywhere, and mostly just because he was covering not just the Dynamo, but of course in the past Houston wasn't that relevant for that reason, and I'm just happy that I was able to bring him on only because he's been providing a lot and a lot of insightful content, and of course lately I've been listening to a lot of Extra Time, and he's probably the best Dynamo fan we have right now in MLS HQ, so there was no question about it.
I think I agree that I am better than Tom, right? Because if you call me the best analyst, then that means I'm better than Tom. So yeah, I'll agree with that part.
Wow. Hey, man, if we knew this was coming, we could ask Tom a little message, Matthew a little message, and I'm sure we left Weeby behind.
Every appearance I do. Yeah, well, I mean, you'll get to him eventually, but every appearance I do, I try to make at least 50% of it a roast of Tom and Weeby. So, just wanted to start it off.
Easy roast. It goes with the feature of instant ramen here.
There we go.
Yeah, and the one thing that we wanted to just ask, just to get things started, like pretty much about your background and how you got started with MLS, and just to like tell people how you got to this point.
I mean, I was a fan, right? Like I didn't grow up in a soccer household, but when I was 13 years old, we were on vacation with my uncle, and he was a soccer guy, and it was during the 1990 World Cup. And I sat down with my uncle and I watched these games and fell in love with this sport that I didn't fully understand. But he got me hooked on the idea that the U.S., and for those of you who don't know, the U.S. didn't qualify for the World Cup from 1950 to 1990. So this was our first time in 40 years. And the U.S. were underdogs in every game that we were going to play. And he said, we're never going to win the World Cup unless we have our own league. And so I became a fan of MLS because I knew at that point, like, oh God, I just want to see the U.S. win the World Cup, before I die. And I was 13 years old thinking this. And so I became a fan of MLS 6 years before MLS existed, because I knew at that point that any time, like if U.S. ever had a top flight soccer league, I was going to be a fan of it in day one, and went back home and started learning everything that I could about the game, and became a fan of. We had the A-League then, which was the forerunner to MLS in a lot of ways, and Connecticut Wolves were our local team, so I went to a lot of Connecticut Wolves games, and I went to a lot of college soccer games. UConn was huge at that point, so I got my education through being a fan, and I was always a terrible athlete, so I never played at any level. But it just by the time 96 rolled around, I was freaking ready. I was so ready. And so I was a day one MLS fan. And at the same time, I love sports, so I was always a soccer writer. Like my first job as a kid, I was 15 years old. My dad drove me down to our local paper, and I was like, I could be a stringer for $35 an article. And so my dad would drive me around to, girls JV volleyball or whatever, and I was a sports writer. And so these two things sort of happened kind of at the same time. My love of soccer and my career as a journalist. And so by the time 96 came around, I was in college, and it was easy to find a lot of outlets to write for decent money about soccer, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Interesting story, man. That's what a way to get into it. Just grind it. You grind it, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to ask, because it's been an interesting almost 30 years of MLS, and just how the league has been growing over time exponentially. And in that period of time, especially for like the last 5 years in particular, obviously a lot of things have changed, especially the Apple TV deal, which obviously dramatically like put you could say like some sort of eye for like the world just to see, because you have this massive platform of a lot of people that can potentially watch the league in a global scale. And of course the fact that the only way to watch Messi is through Apple. From the time we had before Apple and now, what do you feel like is the difference between like the mainstream content, the content that you put out, and obviously I've noticed that there's been like a lot of digital segments that Apple puts on the platform, but what do you feel like it's the difference between then and now?
I think the big difference is the games, the way they're broadcast are better, right? We have better people in the studios who have, and then at the games themselves, guys. I shouldn't say guys, people, because we have a lot of women broadcasters as well who really know the teams, know the entire league, and that has made the product, which is the games, it's the main product. It's made those broadcasts, I think, significantly better than at any time in our league's history. And I think part of that is, if you look at a Premier League game, and I'm not a big Premier League guy, but if you look at a Premier League game and there's 3 minutes to kick off, and broadcast A looks the exact same as broadcast B, looks the exact same as broadcast C, which is what you want, right? You want that uniformity so that as viewers get ready for the game to start, you kind of go through your rituals. And the NFL is really great about doing this every Sunday in America, where it's like, oh, I recognize all the music is playing, and you're getting this exact preview. And so I think MLS, with the Apple deal now, we've been able to create a certain level of uniformity, which makes the games feel significant in a way that I'm not sure they always did with the local broadcasters that we had in the past. That's like far and away the biggest change. As for the week to, or the day-to-day coverage or week-to-week coverage, outside of the studio shows that are done for Apple on Saturday night, I don't feel like anything has changed. And like maybe that's a good thing, because I still have free reign to tell you that CF Montreal absolutely suck this year. They're not a team that's worth watching. There's no silver linings to their, and like it's good. I don't want to have my hands cuffed there. And hopefully, though, as the deal evolves, we get more shows on midweek. We have our version of, is First Take the right type of format? Like it could, like if we had Taylor Twellman in the studio 4 days a week doing First Take, yelling at Sasha Kleshtin, like I think people would like that. So like hopefully that's to come. But the big change was, as you said, the sort of global perspective and the ability to have our games broadcast or streamed really to 6 billion people essentially could have access to Apple TV, and to make every single one look and sound and feel like a high level production. That was a number one thing we had to get right with this deal, and I think they, I haven't been part of that, but I think the people who did have that as their remit did really, really good work with it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with the way everything's being shown, and the way you can see anything. And like, I remember growing up as a kid, it was so hard to watch the Dynamo on TV, and I didn't live in
Oh
Houston,
yeah.
so I didn't get to watch them. I had to figure it out or read the friggin' newspaper. It just sucks. So the evolution of time and the evolution of what all y'all are doing and putting out there, the hard work is just helping the game grow itself. So yeah, it's appreciated. Like Fox said, like you said, man. So yeah, keep it up, man. Keep it up. We're right there with you, following way, way, way behind.
Yeah, and the one thing that is obviously the production quality and it's obviously the games at 1080p is just amazing. But the one thing that I was just concerned the most is just the free reign of like the content you guys have been putting out, and it does gotta be shackled at some point or another. But it's just great that there's still like some creative liberties taken still.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been really disappointed if we didn't have that license to sort of tell things as they are. I mean, they're still third rails, right? I'm not going to say, oh, X, Y, and Z owners are terrible and they should sell their teams for the I've never been able to talk like that. Like it's fine. Like that's part of being league media. But that's no different than it ever was, which is fine because that's not part of the game that's ever interested me. What's always interested me is the tactical side, and the ability to dig into that and why teams are good and bad, why players are effective or ineffective. That's still right there, and that's still what gets me going.
Nice.
But yeah, we can definitely move on to the questions, Eric, for Dynamo, since
Well,
I
perfect,
believe
man.
Doyle's is ready to answer this because we've been holding off. I can sense this excitement right now.
Hey, well, that was a perfect segue as well to get into the Dynamo segment. So, I do have quite a few questions. I'm sure Andreas has some questions for you too. So let's just start off with the captain of the Houston Dynamo, Ache. 21 goal contributions last season, was a major part of the creation. This season, it feels real different. He started off injured, took a minute to come back in. Not sure if he's still into form. He's playing 90 minutes every game, but he only has 2 goal contributions, and everybody knows the team is having problems scoring. National spotlight, in your vision, what is Ache in y'all's thoughts right now?
I mean, he's still one of the best central midfielders in the league, and I know that the goal contributions are down for him, but it's almost ancillary given his role on the team. Like his main job is to get on the ball and set the tempo and make sure that it's the Dynamo who are dictating the pace of the game and where on the field it's played. And I think he's still as good as ever at that. The goal contributions being down is an effect of Quinones being hurt at the start of the year and Baird leaving and having a sort of rotation of mostly false nines starting up top, and Coco Carrasquilla being in and out of the lineup for international reasons and injuries recently. And it just all, it's all been sort of haphazard. And when teams get haphazard like that, it could all fall apart really easily. And I think the fact that it hasn't fallen apart and that you're going into the final month of the season with a legitimate shot to end up top 4 in the Western Conference, I think that's a credit to Ache and Artur, and those center backs who have been really, really good. And then obviously Steve Clark as well. So I think that spine being as good as it's been has allowed for the rest of it to kind of be up in the air a little bit and still have this team putting together a really good season. Now, down the stretch, you need Ezequiel Ponce to be the man. He has to be a number 9 who scores goals the way the top number 9s in the league do. If he can't be that guy, then I don't think Houston's a legitimate threat to win an MLS Cup or even to make it to like the West Final. this year. Like he has to be that guy, and that is still an open question, and it's not one that Ache can answer.
Well, Ponce was the next guy to ask about, and since he's come in as the number 9 striker, he was supposedly going to be the answer to the scoring problem, according to the fans. I wouldn't say Ben Olsen would say that's the answer, but as you were saying, the fans are expecting a lot of him. You think it's a little harsh, the fan reactions to what they're expecting from him?
I mean, I think it's appropriate to have high expectations for the guy who is the record signing and who came in and was immediately inserted into the starting 11 over another number 9 who was actually scoring a bunch at that point, Sebas Ferreira. And now, I've never been a big Sebas Ferreira fan, and we all know that Ben Olsen hasn't been either, but he was doing the number 1 job of that position, which is to put the ball in the back of the net. So it's entirely reasonable to have high hopes and high expectations for Ponce, and criticism is part of that job. If he's not getting it done, then he's going to hear about it. What I would caution against is kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes. Like, the guy's clearly a really good soccer player, and sooner or later, I think it's going to happen for him. That might not be until 2025, right? Like, he would not be the first mid-season addition we've seen come in and struggle in his first year and then sort of click in the second year. It happened with Denny Mwanga. Denny Mwanga couldn't buy a goal his first half season with LAFC. Since then, he's won 2 Golden Boots and has scored something like 50 goals in all competitions. So it can, there are a lot of examples of guys who have improved with a little bit of time under their belt. Maybe Ponce will be that guy, but I really like the way this Dynamo team plays. So I'm kind of hoping that he figures it out as soon as this weekend, and it ends up being sort of a 4-team group atop the Western Conference, because it's very clear that the 2 LA teams and RSL have been a cut above. I still think that Houston can push into that group.
Nice. Andres, any follow-up to the Ponce and Ache?
Yeah, for Ache, just the way, pretty much how he played last year was just abnormal, like unreal. Just coming out of his first half a season with a team that obviously he came in injured, and just to follow up with an insane stat of goals and assists that it's unheard of for a defensive midfielder. It was insane. It was going to be difficult to top it off this year, and I was definitely okay with that. But in the sense that as long as he's still playing or you're just collaborating, it's still good for us, since he's at the end of the day a defensive midfielder and he's just supposed to stay back. And for Ponce, I feel like the criticism it's fair to an extent, only because by the time he got announced and Sebastian Ferreira was on a scoring, like having issues scoring goals and all that, the same week that he was announced, Ponce, Ferreira will score a hat trick and then put out like 5 goal contributions in the next 3 games. And it's just like, I get that Ferreira's going to need some chances, but I'll obviously plug in Ponce immediately. My custom issues with some of the fans. And Ponce is not doing it right now, but I'm still going to be patient. We still got time for him.
All right, moving on to the next guy is Amin Bassi. Amin Bassi has just been knocking it out of the park on the stats. You see it all the time where someone posts the stats. He what he's creating and his passing, his creative, but he's playing that number 10 for Ben Olsen. He is supposed to be that per se creator. So again, we go back to Houston's having problems scoring. Is Bassi's creation an issue? What's the eye test with you for Bassi?
Good player. He's not an elite number 10 in this league. He's got 2 goals this year.
Yeah.
I think
2 and 8 or 2
which
and 6.
That's not enough. I think he gets in good positions. He just doesn't. He hasn't had the quality to finish those movements off. And I think even more than the number 9, goals. Like, he's a number 10. You're supposed to get goals from your number 10, and I think that's been an issue. The creation's really good, right? He does do that at a very high level. I don't think it's an elite level, but I don't have issues with that part of his game. It's just that, like, at some point you need to provide some goals, especially when the rest of the front line is constantly under construction, right? Like, Quinones is out. Okay, you buy an Ali, and Ali's great. He gets hurt too, and it's back to Aliu. Aliu's played some up top as well because rotating number nines and all of that. More of it has fallen on Amin Bassi's shoulders, and he's a good player who's a good functional part of this team, but he hasn't been up to the job of sort of lifting everyone around him and being like, don't worry, I got this. I'm going to win us a couple of games while we sort everything else out. And look, that's the difference between Houston and a team like the Galaxy. Like Ricky Puig can do. Ricky Puig has done that at times. Lucho Acosta won MVP last year by doing that repeatedly, game after game after game. And if you're going to win a Supporters Shield or you're going to win an MLS Cup, you probably need a guy who can do that. I don't think Bossi's that guy. Doesn't mean he's a bad player, but he's not that. And it puts the Dynamo, I think, at a disadvantage when they go head-to-head with the best teams.
Andres?
Like one of the things, especially from the last game, and I feel like Bossi is one of the biggest contributors. It's just like that. Probably the most negative thing I can find from this team is the fact that they always, before they strike or they find a good opportunity to score, they always look for the perfect opportunity, like the perfect passing sequence, or just like the perfect timing to just be open to score. And for us, it's a little bit stressful because, look, if they're shooting, fine, they're getting a lot of opportunities to try and get in the board or just put the game away. And it's just annoying because every time they just like pass around, make an insane sequence, and Basi is just one of those players that just wants to be at the perfect place at the perfect time. So it's just annoying sometimes.
So, follow-up question to Basi. A lot of people would prefer, I say a lot of people, a lot of fans in Houston would prefer Seba starting over Basi, and they see a lot more potential out of Seba. You're shaking your head no. Let us hear it.
I don't think you could do that with the game model, right? You need to have three true midfielders, three true central midfielders, right? And Bossi is a true central midfielder. You don't plunk a number 9 in there and say do the same thing or do something even similar because then you're changing to a 4-4-2. And in the modern game, a 4-4-2 is sort of a specialist formation. The only teams that use a 4-4-2 are teams that don't value using the ball, right? The Red Bulls.
Right.
Philadelphia, another one that plays a 4-4-2. And they're really good teams, but it just couldn't be different, more different than what the Houston Dynamo are. So no, you need that number 10 in that spot, and that especially when you have Coco as your right winger, because he's not really a winger. He's going to come in and he's going to make it a diamond, and that clears out the runway for Griffin Dorsey to push up. It's a brilliant game model. It works really well, and I don't think you want to go away from it. What I think you want to do is give the guys who are at left wing and center forward as many opportunities as they can to turn the sort of patterns of play that the Dynamo have become beloved for by neutrals, give those guys as many chances as possible to make it all work together. And it means you're probably going to have some frustrating games, even frustrating months at a time. But we saw in the Open Cup last year, you guys won a trophy. It's worth it. The game model works. Just give it time with the personnel that you have on hand, and don't
Panic.
Playing two forwards. Yeah, don't panic, and don't dump the game model, because the game model is gorgeous. And there's only one other team who's done that to LAFC, and that's Columbus.
Yeah.
And I think we all know how good Columbus are.
Right, and we get compared to Columbus all the time. We're the second version of them. All right, so Coco Caracia, I know we just gave him his extension, but buy or sell Coco? What should the Dynamo do with Coco Caracia?
I mean, if he's happy to stay there and wants to spend the next 5 years of his career in Houston, then you hold on to that man with both hands and you do whatever it takes to make him happy. He was the Gold Cup player of the tournament a summer or 2 summers ago. Like he is that level of talent, one of the very best midfielders in the entire region. If you're selling him for $7 million or something like that to a Club America type of team. Like that is an elite player. So if you can keep him, you keep him, and you figure the rest out later. But at the same time, you want to have a reputation as a team that does right by its players. That gives you access to more and better players later. So if he's like, hey, I've done 3 really good years here in Houston, I'm proud of it, but like I want to test myself in Europe again, then I think it's incumbent upon Pat Onstad and the rest of that front office to find the right landing spot for him in Europe. I would be very open to that. I would be less open to selling him to a Liga MX team, even giants like Club America, because at this point, those are Houston's rivals. You're going to be playing them every year in either Leagues Cup or CCL or hopefully both. And I would always be hesitant to sell a player to a rival, but there's a price for everything. That's just the nature of the business that we're all in.
Right. Andreas, quick follow-up?
Oh yeah, that was the topic of the summer. Buy or sell, and everyone is just like 50-50.
Yeah.
All right, so honorable mention before I move on is Arthur is the team MVP in my heart. Absolutely, just been a baller every single game, and what he comes out on the field is what you get. But just had to mention that and throw that in there. I don't know if you agree, but
I agree. I will say that as a U.S. national team fan, I had hoped that Arthur would get a call up because I know he's a citizen now, and that makes him eligible for the U.S. team. And I'm hoping that we'll get to see him in January because I think he could add something to this U.S. team with his comfort on the ball, but his two-way ability as a D-mid. He's just wonderful.
That's good to know. We'll start spreading the propaganda. We got more propaganda for Dorsey. We'd like to get Dorsey more propaganda and see if he can get into camp as well.
But Pochettino, better keep an eye on them.
Yeah, we got Tim Howard and Pochettino's here now, so hopefully. But
there we go.
But Ben Olsen, you've kind of alluded to some of the tactics and the brilliance of the way he plays and the style. Is the league catching up to him, or what is the next evolution, or is it like you said, patience?
I think patience is the biggest part of it because I think Ponte is probably really good. Some of the smarter folks I know in Europe who keep an eye on MLS but are also like really well versed in European leagues, they all said he's going to be excellent in MLS. So I think that's once that happens, it's going to have a sort of a snowball effect on everything else. It's going to make it all look better for Houston. The other thing, the heartbreaking thing, is that I thought Anali was the evolution. His ability to he was so dynamic in changing phases of play and going from possession to attack. And I'm not like Aliu doesn't really have that yet. Quinones showed flashes of it last year, and hopefully Quinones is healthy to start the year. But like having a left winger who can tilt the field almost single-handedly, that was the evolution. I hope it'll be a big part of 2025 for you guys.
We hope so too as well. All right, so moving on, the Dynamo. You've got them. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the schedule, but we have home games left: Real Salt Lake, Vancouver, New England, and finish the season with LA. On the road, Austin, Seattle, and St. Louis with a couple Wednesday night home games in there. Where are the Dynamo going to finish in the regular season, and how far can they make it in the MLS playoffs as is right now?
I mean, I could see anywhere from 4 to 8 in the coward's way out because I'm not actually going to choose.
It's too much parity.
But in terms of that group, which is Colorado, Seattle, Vancouver, Houston, Portland. I actually think that Houston have the highest floor because you're so good with the ball and can impose that on teams, and because Steve Clark, you have a top 5 goalkeeper in the league this year, and you also have one of I think the best central defense pairings in the league. So the question with Houston as to how far they can go and how high they can finish comes down to, do you have any ceiling raisers? And that's what this conversation has been about. We started talking about Ache, and I think he raises the ceiling collectively with the ball. But in terms of raising it in the final third, we still don't know what the answer is with Ponce. We still don't know really what the answer is with Bassi, or if we have the answer, it's not what you would hope for a team going into the playoffs. And if he gets on a heater, Ponce gets on a heater, then the analysis probably changes a little bit. But right now, if you guys go into, if you finish, let's say, 6th, and you would have then RSL in the first round, I wouldn't hate that for you guys. If you finish 2nd and you had the Galaxy, that feels like a coin flip. If you finish 8th and end up, with the play-in round, which I would choose you guys to win, but going up against LAFC, and I know you guys have had success against LAFC, I would not choose you to beat LAFC. I just do not. I do not think that we saw it last year in the playoffs, right? Like, you guys got into that game, and LAFC put the pedal down, and suddenly the Houston players are looking around like, oh, I think I have a nosebleed. Things are happening too fast. And so I can't expect something different to happen this year, even though what you did 2 weeks ago was one of the best performances anybody's had against LAFC all year.
Some of us are a little more patient than other fans, but those are the ones that are always boiling hot. And I'm sure you see him on Twitter or on X or whatever. Yeah, it's just it's a basket case. But again, like I said, a little spotlight. Dorsey, we're going to try to get him into the camp if we can. So if you got any inside information, real last for Tim Howard to the team, was that a good addition in your eyes?
For what? I'm sorry.
For ownership to the Houston Dynamo, Tim Howard.
Oh yeah, I mean it could only be a positive thing. He's a legend of U.S. soccer, and he understands the game on both sides of the Atlantic, and that's exactly the type of guy that you want in the ownership group.
Right.
So it's fantastic.
I think he's there to help more Ted than he is Pat. But so, Matt, thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to give us some plugs or some shameless shout outs, anything like that, please do.
Oh, yeah, all my stuff's on MLSsoccer.com, and you could come yell at me on Twitter, though. If you yell at me too loud, I will block you. So be nice.
Just, hey, be professional, y'all. Foxtrot, throw our plugs out there.
Hey, Noodle Time, pretty much like he said, but you can find it on ko-fi.com/dynamicfoxtrot. Yeah.
Well, this is Instant Ramen, y'all. I'm sure Matthew's got to go into the kitchen and work up that beautiful ramen he talked about. As y'all see, Dynamic Spot Pop, Mr. Andreas right there. Good to see you tonight. And everybody, throw those H's up, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Matthew.